You ever just feel like you're fighting a losing battle against, well, chaos? I mean, whether it's the endless scroll on your phone that just sucks you in, or the wild chemistry firing inside our own heads, it really feels like we're constantly pushing back against disorder. Today, we're going to dive deep into that exact fight. We'll explore the incredibly powerful forces, both digital and biological, that are literally rewiring our world and our brains.
So here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start with a massive, kind of cosmic idea about the universe and its natural slide towards chaos. Then we'll see how that very same battle is playing out in the digital rewiring of an entire generation. From there, we'll zoom right in on who's getting lost in this new world. And then we'll pivot to see how we're trying to force order directly onto the brain with medicine. And we'll wrap it all up with a pretty big question for our time.
Okay, so to really get a grip on our modern problems, we have to go way back to the dawn of the information age, and a really foundational idea from one of its pioneers, the mathematician and philosopher Norbert Wiener. Wiener's thinking was just huge, cosmic, really. He saw all of existence as this constant struggle, right? This swim upstream against the great torrent of disorganization. Now, this isn't just some poetic metaphor. He was describing a fundamental law of physics, something with a scientific name, entropy. Think of it like this. If you pour a hot cup of coffee, it doesn't magically get hotter by itself, right? Nope. It cools down. Its energy scatters into the room. Or a neat stack of papers, if you just leave it to the wind, it's going to go everywhere. That's entropy. It's the universe's default setting, the path of least resistance straight toward chaos.
And here is the absolute key to Wiener's whole idea. Everything we build, our bodies, our cities, our laws, our tech, it's all just a temporary little island of order that we've carved out in this massive ocean of entropy. And he said our greatest weapons in this fight are communication and control. Basically, using information to create and hold on to these pockets of structure. But what happens when our very tools of order start creating a whole new kind of chaos?
All right, let's bring that huge cosmic idea right down to earth. Let's talk about a very real, very recent force of disorder, the one that pretty much all of us carry around in our pockets.
Just look at this timeline. I mean, it is staggering. In the span of just a few years, the entire environment for being a kid, for being a teenager, was radically transformed. Before 2010, life was still mostly lived offline. But by 2015, an entire generation was navigating puberty, the most vulnerable period of brain development, with their experience being shaped by algorithms and anonymous strangers on the internet.
And the result? Well, you can see it right here, and it is stark. As smartphones and social media just exploded in popularity, the rate of major depression among teenagers more than doubled in less than 10 years. Researcher Jonathan Haidt says this isn't just a coincidence. He calls it a great rewiring, a fundamental change in how a generation grows up, how they socialize, and how they see the world.
And this rewiring, it seems to affect boys and girls in really distinct ways. For girls, you had platforms like Instagram that just put social comparison and performance anxiety into overdrive. It created these feedback loops where anxiety itself could almost become a shared, viral identity. For boys, it often looked more like a retreat from the physical world into video games and other digital spaces, swapping real-world achievement for virtual ones.
But here's the really tragic irony in all of this. It's not like Gen Z is in denial. As Jonathan Haidt points out, they are acutely aware of the harm. They know what's happening. They're basically the eyewitnesses to their own generation's mental health crisis, and they're fully conscious of the machine that's doing the rewiring. Now let's zoom in even further on one group that seems to be particularly adrift in this new digital landscape: young men. The data here, outlined by researcher Richard Reeves, is, well, it's alarming. During this exact same period of digital rewiring, the suicide rate for young men shot up by nearly a third. We're seeing them pull back from college, and they're disappearing from professions that are absolutely critical to a healthy society. It's this profound disconnection, a retreat into a kind of social disorder that Reeves sums up with one simple word: lost. And this chart, wow, this is just a staggering example. Back in 1971, psychology was a pretty gender-balanced field. Today, only 1 in 5 psychology undergrads are men, and that number is still falling. Now, why does that matter? Because at the very moment that boys and young men are struggling so much, the actual profession designed to help them is losing the male therapist and role models that they might, find it easier to open up to. And this quote right here, it links everything together. That feeling of being lost that Reeves talks about is a direct symptom of the digital disorder we've been discussing. When the real-world paths to finding purpose and meaning are all fogged up by the hyper-stimulating, chaotic pull of the online world, it can lead to what Haidt calls a deep feeling of uselessness. It's a failure to find your place in that enclave of order. Okay, so on one hand, we have this massive accidental rewiring of society that seems to be cranking up the disorder. But what happens when we try to fight that disorder head-on? Let's contrast all that societal chaos with a very deliberate, very medical attempt to impose order directly onto the human brain. So when the brain's own signaling system descends into the chaos we call psychosis, with symptoms like hallucinations or delusions, we intervene directly. And one of our most powerful tools is a class of drugs called antipsychotics. This is us trying to hack the hardware itself to restore order.
So, how do they actually work? Well, in a nutshell, they impose control. As Dr. Nicholas Hatcher explains it, they basically work by blocking dopamine receptors. They're effectively turning down the volume on a brain system that has gone completely haywire. And some of the newer drugs also target serotonin receptors to kind of fine-tune the effects. It's a direct chemical intervention designed to restore order from chaos.
But, and this is a really big but, that control comes at a steep price. These are not gentle interventions. Long-term use has been linked to a reduction in brain volume, and they can cause really serious metabolic side effects. We're talking weight gain, blood pressure, blood sugar. It's a whole list that needs constant monitoring. And that is why the guiding principle for doctors is always to use the absolute lowest dose that gets the job done. It is a constant high-stakes balancing act. And you can see that careful strategy illustrated right here. For a first episode, doctors will usually start with drugs that are easier for the body to tolerate. If that doesn't work, then they have to shift focus to what's most effective, even if it comes with tougher side effects. It's this methodical process of escalating control, always weighing the chaos of the illness against the real costs of the cure.
Okay, so let's try to bring these two big threads together. We've seen two really profound attempts to fight disorder. One was accidental and societal, the other was deliberate and biological. So what does it all mean?
On the one hand, you have the chaotic, totally uncontrolled social experiment of the phone-based childhood, which inadvertently seems to have plunged a generation into a state of digital disorder. And on the other hand, you have the precise clinical application of medicine, a direct attempt to impose chemical order on a brain that's in crisis. And this brings us right back to where we started, with Norbert Wiener. Writing all the way back in 1947, just as the age of computers was dawning, he was already deeply worried. He was afraid that our new tools for communication and control would ultimately lead to a really dangerous concentration of power. And man, that warning feels more relevant today than ever before. Which leaves us with this final, really crucial question. In our relentless war against entropy, against chaos, are we actually creating spaces for people to thrive, to flourish? Or are we just getting better and better at building more effective systems of control, some digital, some chemical, all in the name of order? That is the challenge that Wiener saw coming all those years ago, and it's the one we are living through right now.